Yes. Now, and this is back to the point that I've been making, Dr. Iowa. Even with one of the reasons I said I'm presenting some of this, it is from the very beginning that instead of telling the people the truth of what happened, to get the people to stop feeding into the situation, they do what? They find these places of revenue streams for themselves in the false issue and the fraud that had been put upon the people, etc., acting like they're helping the people when they are what? Extending the administration of the problem under the guise of quote unquote teaching law, when they're really working for the Bar Association and they themselves are continuing to exploit their own people.
Here's a question. Please ask Taj.
However, this is another point that I'm making. Our people need to comprehend that they need to stop trusting these people who claim to be government and understand that all these governments have been corrupted and compromised, and so have their so-called assistants to the lawyers who have been put among them in the name of helping them, who they themselves are exploiting the injuries of our people, making a revenue stream for themselves rather than attacking the frauds themselves and the platforms upon which the frauds are built. They get on the bandwagon of these fake cure, semi-cure remedies, etc. Well, we're going to take you through this process. Yeah, right. A birthright needs no process, it needs a claim.
Well, questions, there's quite a few questions and comments.
We need to get rid of these parasites.
Okay. Is there any international bodies that most?
Yeah, you don't have what you call reach into some of these hybrids who are hiding in tunnels under the ground, but you certainly have access to the people that are coming around you in the name of black leader guys and tribal daggone craps, Indian tribe craps to rape your people, continuing this BS that's been going on in exploiting our people. How about undoing the foundation of this crap? That's what you should be focusing on. Let's get to the root of the problem.
Question is, could you elaborate on the type of government systems Morocco was operating on?
All of these government systems have been operating on piracy or admiralty law, knowingly and deliberately moving the people away from common sense and common law, which is the law of the land. For law itself means land, air, and water. And you know that the constitutional principles that govern people's properties, their estates, etc., is the law of the land, sometimes referred to as the supreme law of the land, i.e., which is the Constitution and the treaties, etc., which is why they don't teach civics or common law to the common people, etc., i.e., the principles of government and American law, because they don't want you to go there, because you will immediately recognize that these people who've been around you in the name of black leader guys are actually minions, and they have handlers behind them who are really members of the Circle Church and Chancery, i.e. the Bar Association and the Board of Education, whose really job is to help exploit you themselves while pretending to be fixing the so-called problem. They're vampires too. This is why most of them don't like Taji guy, because I don't play with them. Damn sellouts.
Someone was asking what if you explain what the philosophy page is for the Board of Education and where to find it. You can.
Let's do this.
But they can
because
Google that.
This.
It's on.
It only took a minute. because we've been sharing with you all tonight and references made to that, keep in mind, we want you to have a clear comprehension of what we're talking about, and that much of what got us in the condition that we're in now has been really our concepts that we have received in the name of education, and why many people who have vetted among you to so-called educate you, etc., are really got their backing from the Board of Education and made their living to help keep you dumbed down, etc., i.e. with their curriculum that actually comes from John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates with the 1902 General Education Board, which is available to all of you to read. However, for your edification, I will read it right now to you all. It's only an extended one-piece paragraph, and this is all the schools and education systems, etc., operating in the Western Hemisphere, whether you're talking about Canada or the U.S. corporation, etc., their jurisdictions. This is their operation and their philosophy. This should tell you much. So anyone who's been teaching your children, they'll pretend they don't know this, and you'll never hear them mention this because they were getting their quote-unquote paycheck and experience of teaching thousands of children. Yeah, right. Helping the Romans mess your babies up. This is direct philosophy page of all the members of the Board of Education. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo, great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one. To train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. Education Board, General Education Board, Occasional Papers #1. That's called animal husbandry. That they've been training your children, our children, and ourselves in all of these education systems, from the college to kindergarten, etc. And with the participation of many people around you who proudly boast of their years in helping to educate the children. They didn't go against this principle because that's what gave them their overseer Negro paychecks. It's public knowledge. And you all keep making excuses for these parasite sellouts because they speak intelligently. Yeah, right. You think they're your enemy? How much did they get in your pockets for this time? How many donations you gave them? Huh? Huh? Yeah, right. Look at their record and see what they actually built in the community. See what they actually produced. And you'll find most of them are narcissists.
So
very selfish and arrogant at the same time.
I am Spiritual K asks, where should we keep our assets then?
You keep your assets on your backside. for starters. But the real deal is, yes, this is one way to keep your assets. It's called, in silver and gold, if you look at the principles of proper government, that the gold and the silver coin, no debt can be what? Paid or satisfied without gold or silver coin. At what point you all didn't read the principles of Constitution that come from Muslim law that Obama even told you about, and he's part of the criminality, but yet he told you that. He told you that the Constitution, American Constitution, come from Muslim law. He didn't hide it. Why you all keep on pretending y'all don't know this stuff? Because you haven't been interested. Now that y'all been getting screwed, everybody wants a pill, an overnight comprehension of what's going on. I suggest that you honorably start taking your place among the affairs of men and start studying the truth about civics, etc., and African history of jurisprudence, which was introduced in Iberia and then pushed around the world, i.e., in the name of England, because it didn't come from the Angles, it came from the Moors. You better start acting like you know.
Look, you were saying to me when I guess when I first heard you talking about that back about almost 10 years ago, you were talking about, well, about 10 years ago. This is October, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is our 10th anniversary month.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or was it 11?
No, it was 2011.
Yeah. All right.
So this is 10 years.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, Grand Sheik.
You were doing it.
Anyway, you were talking about the silver, and you were talking about what was going to happen with the banks and so forth 10 years ago.
And I told you that that the nations would stop trading with them.
You did. You were saying
that they would have a feedback loop, and they would doing what? Be eating their own tail, i.e., buying their own bonds. Because remember, the bond system, the U.S. Treasury bond system of that corporation that has been impostered to the people as government or as a nation, which is really a human trafficking platform, that their U.S. Treasury bonds was based on the backs of these Asiatics in North America, calling themselves Negroes, blacks, coloreds, and Indians, etc., i.e., the true Americans, the Aboriginal people, i.e., Phoenicians. The people are Moors, etc. The true Americans, the copper complexion people, etc., i.e., with hair like lamb's wool, skin like burnished brass, as if burned in the oven, who forgot their bloodline, who allowed the hybrid Europeans come in, steal their identity, and go to and fro the earth in their name, devouring nations. This has been going on, and you all keep pretending that you don't know this. When many of you and your uncles and fathers have participated in these wars against your own blood, keeping these hybrids in power, then complaining about their mistreatment of you. In the rule of cause and effect and compensation and reciprocity and retribution justice is called a principle of cause and effect. I think it's also referred to as what thou sowest, so shall thou reap. Let's take some considerations and make some corrections in our actions and recognize the issues before all of us here at Midgard of the higher self and the lower self, and choose your side. Because you're not going to serve two masters and get this stuff off anymore. And you can stop playing dumb. You can keep playing dumb, and you'll just be part of the food for these vampires. You know, like I said to you before, Dr. Nayola, about 18 years ago, around the corner, and I did that lecture about evolve or become fodder. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah. A lot of things you spoke are coming to pass, have come and are coming, even now with a fervor. You know, it's like
here they got what, hundreds of ships, they'll say 50, 60, 70, off the port of Long Beach, which is one of the largest ports in the north for trade. They're sitting out there, and though part of it is artificial, part of it is also because they are not accepting the U.S. Treasury bond for trade anymore, which I told you 10 years ago. Remember what we just talked about?
Yeah.
And guess what? Remember when, as you already know, we've been working on your kitchen, right?
6 months.
And when they kept beating you around with the delivery of your
My
cabinets, before they admitted, I told you that they were having a supply issue, and they're not telling you that. But you continuously going around there having these meetings with them, they were forced to admit to you supply issues, didn't they?
Yes.
Now, what happened today when we happened to go to a certain place talking about windows? And I said it so that they would have to admit it. I said, "You're having supply issues, aren't you?" He said, "Yep." Well, I already knew that. I knew that a long time ago. Now, the deal of it is, when you comprehend the operations of the political platform, etc., knowing some of these things gives you not what you call a hand up, but it gives you a cognizance up on preparing how you run your life, knowing these things are going to come about, so that you're not blindsided or you're less injured by, and you're better able to handle the crises that are going to be set before you, because you know it's coming. Meaning that if you're going down a road and you already been given a map and you see the potholes, doesn't mean that you can't be slowed down. It doesn't mean that you can't bust your tires. But what it does mean is that you're already prepared, not be going full steam ahead, that you're starting to do what? Tiptoe through the tulips and figuring out ways to navigate where the being who's not aware of these traps goes headlong and he gets destroyed. We're all going to be injured by this, but you're better able to navigate this situation knowing it was coming. This is why we told people years ago, take your fiat out of the banks, start investing in what? Physical assets.
Yeah.
Convert your properties into allodial trusts. Buy silver, not because you can't get gold, because you're not going to be trading in gold. It's good security if you have finance, but you're never going to transact normal business with the gold. You will be transacting business with silver, though, around the world. Now, is it not upon us now, Dr. Naila? Have we not discussed these very same things 10 years ago?
Sure have.
All right.
That's why I'm stacking.
And then a lot of these people around us was mad at Taji Guy one day. Said that Taji Guy was making this stuff up. Yeah, and like they ain't going to be affected by this too. But what they've been doing is what? Taking advantage of our people in their injury. Exploiting them and trying to get hundreds of notes from them, a revenue stream to deal with this existing problem, rather than trying to cure the problem, when all of us wouldn't have to worry about this economic suppression if we all in our conscious mind come together with the mind of rejecting Rome and correcting these principles, etc., and restoring the principles of proper jurisprudence, honoring our mothers and fathers, reclaiming our lost estate. And in the process, the vampire will die, because you're immediately going to be taking these straws out your neck. Because much of it is done mental. It will then manifest in the physical.
I'm trying to see if I can ask this question. There was a question about why, I can't find it, but basically she's asking why the nationality card is not accepted at airports and libraries.
Because they are de facto, which is why now you comprehend that they're not your government. The exercise is to liberate you from the concept that they are legitimate. They have you thinking that you're illegitimate. It's called projection. We told you this a long time ago. Even we have been teaching people over years to send writs. We tell you these are what? Proclamations and notices. You don't expect a response from them because they're not the legitimate government. But you needed to know that, because you keep putting your faith and trust in them. They keep showing you they're de facto. Let's look at this realistically. How is it that persons who claim to be government don't accept a registered among themselves, rightfully, nationality card, but they will accept a contractual driver's license and then call it an identification card? And you allow that to take place and don't challenge it. And yet you make those kind of statements or questions when it's become obvious.
Because now they're asking for get you to get a real ID. So what did you have?
Oh, so there you go.
If now you got to get a real ID, well, what did I have before?
Let's go back to the problem that they're having right now. They're having this immigration problem that they so-called is happening with other Americans coming across the southern border of America. And then you have non-Americans who have been operating here who are questioning their nationality when they themselves don't have a nationality card. I suggest this to any of you. How many of you can share with us on any so-called website that you may have or platforms that you may have a U.S. identity card? Have you ever seen one? Just like you recognize this moment of silence.
Crickets.
It's exactly because it doesn't damn exist. So if they're claiming that a Moorish nationality card of identification is not the real one, tell them to show the real identification card. And did you ever notice while they're challenging the Moorish nationality card, they have not presented to you a nationality card themselves? It's called projection, which I told you of before. And the people keep giving them the credibility of being the legitimate government to even challenge anything. And they're de facto, absolute. Now, you see, years ago, Dr. Naila, remember about 7 years ago, myself and Sister Delilah shared with the people, we gave people copies of the United States Corporation registration. And you seen their corporate papers, and we showed you their corporate papers to literally show you the documents.
Yeah.
That they are a private corporation. They're not, quote unquote, a national government.
Even incorporated here in Delaware.
Of course, right around the corner. Right around the corner. And do you notice that most of all of their subdivisional corporations that are all over across the land, and even in Canada, and even in Australia, are registered around the corner and on the U.S. stock market? It's not a secret. And all of these intelligent people who are teaching law and civics won't tell the people that, will they? Why? Because most of them are getting their little paychecks from these subdivisional entity operations. If you vet them, you'll see that they're associated with bar associations and the Board of Education. So they're not going to rock the boat. So they're always going to talk against Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and they're always going to talk against the Constitution for the United States, which comes from Muslim law. Because once you start studying these principles of American law, you'll start recognizing not only that these people who claim to be government are frauds, but all of their so-called helpers in your community, you'll start recognizing for yourself that they've been placed among you, not by accident.
Let me see. Jasmine Tax says, how can a Moor become a member of the Moors Order of the Round Table?
I've never made people members of the Moors Order of the Round Table except in its initiation of operations in 1982. And specifically, my sister Hydera pretty much dealt with a platform for the children, for development of the children, etc. And we had many people who were uh, dealing with different platforms within that platform, but I mainly use that platform for publications and as a teaching platform, knowing that different organizations, because for those of you who know some of my history, in part of my history of my travels, I was an assistant minister in the Nation of Islam, and I was also a member in the Moorish Science Temple of America, from which I derived a lot of information and knowledge. And I also recognized that within certain venues that I would not be permitted or allowed or cooperated with if I started telling certain fundamental truths and knowledge that I had before, during, or even after dealing with many of these people. I learned that early in my travels, which is why I established Moore's Order of the Round Table in 1982, which would not have me under their jurisdictional venues, and I would not be hampered or sandbagged when I start exposing certain truths that I knew that would help our people. But I also knew that many people in all of our organizations were also compromised, and they really don't want our people to develop or to be liberated. They actually want them as taxpayers and bill payers for themselves. And they're in the business of making thrones for themselves. They're not in the business of either making the people erudite or liberating the people. They're in the business of feeding off of the victim mentality with no remedies and no cures. And they're more interested in preserving their clubs and their organizations. They're not interested in actually liberating the people or curing the problems. That's why I founded the Moorish Order of the Round Table. And I also, in short order, after operating, didn't make a lot of members because I wasn't going to allow them to contaminate it and do what I saw them doing to many of the other orders. So I just used it as a platform for publishing.
Okay. Here's a question.
And because I also knew, in fact, that even the Moorish Order Roundtable people who were around me were also planted or put as infiltrators, which is why at a point in the processes of developing and expanding and going around the country and sharing information, why certain people I was dealing with, you saw me, I stopped publishing with them because I already knew the feds were among us.